Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to probably the final lesson inside of our Kotlin YouTube series for the Android platform. Now, the final feature that I want to show you how to build is how we can load a web page instead of a WebView component for a brand new activity. And what that is going to look like is this right here. So let me show you by going back to my emulator. Let me click into an item. And when I click into that particular item, we are loading a web page inside of a WebView component that looks kind of like this. And the web page changes every time I click on a different item. So that is a really cool feature. And inside of a lot of Android apps, this is also very useful. So let's see how we can build this out inside of Android Studio right now. Okay, so here we are back inside of good old Android Studio. And I would like to run my project right now to remind you where we left off in the last episode. And basically we have our emulator here. Clicking into that item, we are inside of CourseDetailActivity, and we left off last time inside of this fetch JSON function, and we're fetching all of our course lessons that kind of shows up from this URL over here. And we are now ready to implement some behavior that actually executes a web view inside of a whole new activity. So the way that we're going to actually do this is to look inside of this class of CourseDetailAdapter, and all the way down below we have course lesson view holder. So this is very similar to the other lessons where we actually set a click listener on one of these items to actually perform some custom code, custom logic. And let's go over here, and inside of course lesson view holder, you can go ahead and type in init like that to provide a custom initializer for this class. And I'm going to set a custom on-click listener on the custom view object, which you can think of that as whatever that's holding each one of these rows over there. So I'm going to say custom view dot set on click listener with a dot 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 and enter. And down here we can do something. So let's say print ln attempt to load WebView somehow. So how do we do that? Well, I'm not exactly sure yet, but why don't we run our code to confirm that our on-click listener actually works. And we'll click inside this, click into here, and we get this message down below. So attempting to load WebView somehow, click that, we get additional messages down on the bottom. Okay, so really good job, and we're going to load a web view before we start to fill up these rows, just so I can get some web view action going. And so how do we load a different activity with a web view inside of it? Well, we need to create a brand new activity first, so new Kotlin file class, and we'll call this the course lesson activity for each individual lesson. Just hit OK. Down here we create a new class. This is going to be called course lesson activity. We subclass again the app compatibility activity, and then we execute the constructor at the very end. And this might be really confusing if you're just new to Kotlin, but that's kind of how the syntax works. And inside of here we say on create, and I think I want to use this guy without the persistent state, so call that. And for this brand new activity, we need to set the actual view somehow. So set content view to some kind of layout. And for this, you need to pass in some kind of layout object. So why don't we create a brand new layout resource file like that. And this we'll call it activity course lesson. And it is of type root element constraint layout. And we'll just hit OK, and that'll give us this brand new layout file that kind of looks like that. If you browse the text, it's very basic. There's not a whole lot inside of this object right now. So why don't we go ahead and look for the WebView component, drag that sucker inside, and now you should be okay. So there's a little warning there, which is kind of telling you to pin this to the top right there, pin this to the left. So kind of hard to grab these little pins, but you want to make sure you anchor it to the top, left, right, and bottom like that. Okay, so inside of the layout width and height, we want to expand it fully to the outer edges of our activity. So we just say match constraint, and that'll magically adjust the view accordingly. Next, I want to set the edges to all the way on the right left, top, and bottom. So make sure to hit 0 for each of the padding values. And so now we have this brand new layout called activity course lesson. Go back to course lesson activity, and then you can say r.layout, and now we have activity course lesson as that view. All right, so really good stuff. And let's see, what do I want to do now? Well, before I run, let me see if I can do this with the course lesson. Click on the web view, give it an ID of, let's say, WebView course lesson. Sounds like a good name. Go back to the course lesson activity, and you can try to say WebView course lesson, set background color. And let's use color dot, I don't know, yellow. Is that a color? Sounds like a good color. And now I can try to load this course lesson activity. But if you run your code, you're not going to get it to work yet because we haven't loaded the activity through this intent object. So go back to course detail, which is this page. And inside of the set on click listener, which is over here, we want to perform the intent right here. Val intent, let it be something. So intent, if you're missing your classes, you can auto import it by hitting Option and enter, and that'll give you something that you can actually use. And so there you go. And then for this, you need the custom view guy, which is that up above. And now we can say context. And then the next parameter for this intent is the actual activity that you want to load. So this is the course lesson activity. See if that'll come up. And you want the actual type with class.java. Finally, you say custom view.context.start activity with this intent object like so. All right, so that should be the code that's necessary to run this whole new activity that has a web view inside of it. So let's see if that works. So I'm going to click inside of here. This is my course detail. For my course lesson, one of these holder guys, I'll click into it, and that'll attempt to load this brand new activity. And as you can see, it didn't really work because we haven't modified our Android manifest file yet. So again, you always have to go to your manifest and declare your activities so that your application can actually start it. So this is very easy. You say activity, let's see, course lesson activity, close it off like that. And then you just want to say metadata and then give it an Android, say not a value, but this name guy, and just say Android support. You have to declare this parent activity just to have the backstack work correctly. And the value is going to be the course detail activity because when you go back, you have to get to the course detail. So with those two additions to our manifest, we can now successfully launch our course lesson activity, which looks like that. And our web view, it has a background color of yellow. So that's why it looks like that shade of kind of color. So going back to course lesson activity, how do we actually load a particular web page inside of a web view component? Well, you just want to simply say web view course lesson, and you want to load a particular path, right? So I think you can just stuff in any string you want, and let's say google.com. And I don't know if this actually works, so let me rerun my page. And there you go, we have google.com right inside of there. So if you turn off the yellow color, apply these changes instantly, you have Google inside of your web view. All right, so that's pretty much all there is to this feature that you want to build out. Now, if you want to load a particular course lesson that belongs to one of these items, for example, if we go back to our final product here, each one of these pages correspond to whatever item you are clicking, right? So you click on there, it actually loads the tapping push notification action course lesson for the Instagram Firebase course. And you just have to do all of this work of setting up your adapter so that you can load things correctly. I'm not sure if you want to see all of that, but I guess I'll do it just to show you how easy it is. And let's see, I'm going to now flesh out my course detail page, and let's go to course detail. And I would like to turn this page into something that is much cleaner. For example, this over here, right? So this is all course detail activity. And what we are doing right now is we're fetching the JSON inside of this call. So activity creates, then we fetch the JSON. Down here, we actually have all of our course lessons. So the way I'm going to change my page here to actually reflect those course lessons is to modify my adapter. And currently I'm returning 5 items for item count, right? And that's why we have 5 particular rows. And the way that you would do this is, again, you modify your course detail adapter to include this custom property called course lessons. And I'm going to make it be of a property type of array, course lesson, like that. Close off the bracket and use a parentheses there. So this course lesson, this is called a generic, and an array can be of type anything, right? So that's what a generic means. And the reason why I'm using this is because we've parsed it out with this over there, and it makes it very easy for me to just set up the recycler view. So recycler view main, I guess that's what we have for the recycler view over here. So at the very top, we don't really need to set this anymore because it doesn't really mean anything with our course detail adapter having nothing in the constructor. So why don't I copy that and then comment that out. Whenever I'm done fetching this JSON stuff and the course lessons is available, I can paste that in there and say recycler view main, which is, it's not really main, but it's this over here. Course detail adapter can actually use course lessons, so like that. And inside of get item count, we're just going to return course lessons dot count, or perhaps size. I think they do the exact same thing. And so once you have that minor change, your course detail page will now have the amount of lessons based on the thing that's in your course lesson. So let's see what's going wrong here. Now, a mistake that I often make is whenever I'm trying to set an adapter inside of a background fetch call, if I don't use the run on UI thread call, it'll crash kind of like what you just saw. So let me go over here and paste that in there and rerun my code. Now we can correctly set up our adapter on the main thread, which will refresh our list. And now it looks like this over there. So that's kind of how you set up this custom adapter thing so that you can use your course lessons instead. And then finally, if you want to fill out each one of these items with each individual course lesson to kind of look like that, all you have to do is to go inside of your course lesson row, which is this nice little thing, and you can modify some of this stuff. So the text view, I think I have it bolded in the duration, so I'm going to use the bold text to hit the bold, and then over here, I think this is a lot larger. For the layout height, I actually want to wrap content to make sure it wraps the entire bit of text. Text size, I think I use 16 SP for the text size. And now I can give these images some actual useful IDs. So image view, I don't know, course lesson, thumbnail. For the course title, text view, let's see, what do we want to call this? Course lesson title. Seems to be okay. For the text view number 2, I'm going to call this just duration. And then back into course detail activity. Whenever we are kind of inside of the adapter, we're really able to only modify the row. So these rows, we are able to configure it every time we are in this bind view holder function. So let me remove these comments because we don't exactly need it. So backspace there, and there we go. So inside of this method, we're going to fetch the course lesson for the correct row. So val course lesson equals course lessons dot get position. Basically on bind view holder gets called for each one of these rows here. So course lesson, we are getting it through this call. And then finally holder has this custom property on it called custom view, which is kind of initialized through this constructor. And then you can say text view course lesson title dot text equals course lesson dot name, I think the property is called. And inside of here, you just want to make sure you have your question marks because all of these guys are optional parameters or optional properties. And then you can do the same thing with holder, question mark custom view dot, I think duration, text view duration dot text equals course lesson. and then we just use the duration property on course lesson. Finally, for this image view on the left side, we can say Picasso, which is our third-party library that we construct with context. And what is this? Well, holder dot custom view dot context is our context. We can load the image from the course lesson dot image URL, and then we have something called dot into, and into some kind of image view. So the way I'm going to access the image view is perhaps to say val, let's see, image view equals holder custom view dot dot image view course lesson thumbnail, and we just pump that guy in there. So apply these changes right away. We should be able to see some nice images for the course lesson, and also the text views on the right will look like that. So obviously you can modify your course lesson rows to be a lot better looking. And for the final product, I have some additional fields inside of the right side. So it's all up to you based on how you like to set up your views. You can do whatever you want. All right, so the last bit of logic that we need to implement inside of our code right now is the bit of logic that handles the loading of the correct course lesson inside of our web view. And the way to actually do that is to use the model property on course lesson. And the property is actually this link property. And I will go back to my course detail activity. And the way this works is kind of very similar to how we are passing information from activity using an intent to this next activity. So what I'm going to do is to go inside of course lesson view holder, and inside of the actual set on click listener, we'll use intent.putExtra, and I'm going to put the actual course lesson link inside of this intent object somehow. So again, I want to use a actual company or companion object key of val, and we'll say course lesson link key. Okay, so instead of here, I'll just use course lesson link like so, and then we'll use this over there. And now I actually need to pass in the course lesson link. So in order to get this to work, I'm going to modify my course lesson view holder to actually have another property on it. So let's say var, and we'll say course lesson, and let it be of type course lesson optional. And I'll just initialize it as null in the very beginning. And that's kind of how we do it. And the reason why we use var is because if we use val, we can't really modify it. So that's kind of why I do that. And then on the bind view holder function, our holder, we can actually say holder dot course lesson equals the course lesson on line 85. So paste that in there. And then for the intent, all we have to do now is to just pop in the course lesson dot link property like so, and put a question mark right there. And now every time we start this course lesson activity through this intent object, we can fetch the actual course lesson link. Okay, so run this code and everything is going to be just fine. We're still loading the Google activity, however, or the google.com in our WebView activity. So click on there. That is google.com. So go back to the course lesson activity. And let's say val course link equals get our intent, and we'll get our string extra with the name of whatever our course lesson view holder is. So what is that guy called? Course lesson view holder. So we can't get access to it. I would like to actually delete the private like that. And we can say course lesson view holder dot course lesson link key. So it actually appends the course detail activity on it because this is actually a child class that belongs to the activity. That's kind of why that's there. And then you'll get your course link by just getting the string extra out of the intent object. So finally, you would just load the course link instead. So remove this good stuff, course link, and let's see what that does. I'm going to try to run this instantly. And over here, we get kind of this blank empty page. So one thing that's kind of strange about these pages is that it doesn't exactly want to load pages that require JavaScript. So I'm going to take in a little bit of code in another page, and I'm just going to paste it into here. So paste that. So course or web views, they have a couple of properties on it called settings, and you can enable JavaScript like that. And you can also set these couple of properties on the bottom. So let me try to run this one more time. And then we should be able to get our course link being loaded properly in there. Now, if you disable some of these properties, the page is going to look a little strange. So make sure to enable this if you are loading pages that aren't exactly optimized for a mobile website. All right, so that about wraps it up for this entire series on how to build out a pretty useful application that contains very, very common features that you'll need in order to have a useful app on the Google Play Store. And as you can tell, a lot of the code that we wrote out in the Kotlin language was actually pretty easy and pretty straightforward, and hopefully you learned a lot along the way. And then finally, we're still missing the customization of the action bar at the very top. So leave a comment down below if you want to see how to actually build out that feature and the logic required for that implementation. So that's going to be it for me today. Make sure to download the source code using the link in the description below, and also give the video a thumbs up. And I'll see you in perhaps another series.